Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Monday, April 28th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 532 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. And today we've got some New York Jets undrafted free agent signings to break down here on the podcast as the dust is starting to settle from the 2025 NFL draft. The first, of course, for Darren Muji, Aaron Glenn, and the rest of this new regime. Now begins the other roster additions like the UDFAs, which so far the New York Jets have signed 15 UDFAs, who we will break down all of them in today's episode. As always, though, before we begin, we got to tell you about our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. If you want to get in on any of the sports betting action, check out BetUS and use my link in the description of this video to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek, if you want to get in on any of the awesome and best tickets in sports or entertainment, check out SeatGeek and use my code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase and get yourself out to some awesome events. And of course, our friends over at Huga House, if you want any of their original or new collection of hats and sweatshirts, check them out. Code BUBS for 15% off any purchase and get yourself some awesome Huga House swag. So here we go, episode 532. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It is Monday, about 2 days now removed from the NFL draft day number 3, as the New York Jets, of course, completed their first draft under Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn. And now you sort of have the draft fallout as the dust begins to settle with all of your undrafted free agent signings. So today I want to break down, at the time of this recording, the New York Jets have made 15 undrafted free agent signings at the time I am recording this. So I want to break down all 15 players, and we'll start here with Quentin Skinner, wide receiver out of Kansas. He's 6'5", 195 pounds, senior. In his career, he played 49 games, had 80 receptions for 1,584 yards, 19.8 yards per reception, and 11 touchdowns. Kind of an impressive yards per reception number. Like I said, he just had a tick under 20 in his career for yards per reception, and last season had 22.3 yards per reception in 2024. So put up some impressive numbers from that perspective. He's a downfield threat, kind of more of your lankier type of wide receiver, a guy that'll, of course, enter in here as a UDFA, looking to potentially break this roster. They are giving him $185,000 in guarantees here. The Jets, of course, only took one wide receiver in this draft. That was Arian Smith. Kind of a mixed reaction amongst the fan base. I don't think many people are very high on him or this entire wide receiver room. So Skinner will come in here. Got rookie minicamp, got the summer, of course, all this stuff before the season begins. Look to potentially crack this wide receiver room as a depth piece when the summer rolls around. So that was UDFA number 1. They also signed Donovan Edwards, running back out of Michigan. This is kind of a bigger name, the biggest name, I would say, out of all 15 of these players so far, because Donovan Edwards is a guy that a little while back you think he probably would have been a first-round pick, and here he is a couple years later. He's a UDFA. 5'11", 205 pounds, senior out of Michigan. This was a guy that was actually the college football 25 cover athlete, one of the cover athletes. And you go back 2 years ago, Donovan Edwards had a very productive 2022 season where he had 140 carries for 991 yards, a impressive 7.1 yards per carry, and 7 touchdowns. 2023 then happened. Michigan, of course, wins the national championship. That national championship that year, 2024 national championship. And then last year takes place, and you were kind of expecting this explosion from Donovan Edwards, and it never really happened. So an interesting and intriguing prospect here for the New York Jets to sign as a UDFA. This was a guy that 2 years ago to even just as early as last year, you'd think would have been a lock to not only be drafted, but potentially he projected at the time as a guy who could be a first-round talent. And the next 2 seasons after 2022 just never really went as planned. His production wasn't there. And here he is. He slips through the crack as a UDFA. A guy who in his career, 50 games played at Michigan, had 422 carries, 2,251 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, and 19 touchdowns. Not only has impressed at times, during his career at Michigan as a runner, of course, but also somebody who can be a productive pass catcher out of the backfield. Interesting signing, intriguing signing, definitely the biggest name of all these guys so far. But you look at this running back room, it's going to be tough to crack it. The Jets really like this running back room. They really like these 3 guys that they have in Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. Aaron Glenn has already talked about it. You also have Kene Nwangu, who is kind of your special teams guy out of that running back backfield. So we'll see what happens with Donovan Edwards, but will be somebody interesting to watch at camp, knowing that this was a guy at one point that had a lot of potential, just never quite lived up to it at Michigan. They also signed Dean Clark, safety out of Fresno State, a guy that I actually mocked to the Jets a couple times, and the Jets also had interest in him in the pre-draft process. So not a crazy surprise here to see when you put the connections together to see him fall out of the draft and then get picked up as a UDFA. 6 foot, 206 pound senior. He spent 6 seasons in college football, so a long time. 4 in the MAC with Kent State, and in the last 2 seasons with Fresno State. I mentioned the Jets' interest in him. They actually had him in on a top 30 visit. So a guy that they clearly saw something in, clearly liked the meeting enough to get him here as a UDFA. In his career, 59 games played, 304 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 14 passes defended, and 5 interceptions. He also took a handful of special team snaps during his career, just around 700. So somebody that could also come in here and potentially play a special teams role for this team if he's able to find a spot on this roster. Another secondary addition here, Jordan Clark, cornerback out of Notre Dame. So the Jets took Mason Taylor, son of Jason Taylor, NFL alumni, NFL Hall of Famer, obviously. And Jordan Clark here is the son of Ryan Clark, who also played in the NFL. So got some NFL lineage between those 2 guys. Another one with his dad being a former NFL player. Jordan Clark's 5'10", 181 pounds, senior. He's 24 years old, so a little bit on the older side. Similar to Dean Clark, he also spent 6 seasons in college football, 5 with Arizona State, and then spent 1 year last season with Notre Dame. Pretty versatile. He can play safety, and he can also play nickel as well. So kind of a versatile guy that can do, a little bit of both, but also a player here who is maybe finds himself, the Jets don't really have like a true backup nickel corner behind Michael Carter II. So could he be a guy that with a good summer, with a good training camp, finds a spot there? Maybe. I would say also similar to Dean Clark and similar to a lot of the other guys, you'd have to probably look at a special teams option if he's going to want to make this roster. Because a lot of times these guys, right, they can't find they're not going to be able to break it through at their position group. If you can provide special teams value, you'll find a spot on the roster in many situations across the league because teams value special teams a lot. So that could be a way here. But it'll be interesting to see how that all kind of plays out. If they like him enough to keep him around as kind of a legitimate backup nickel corner, maybe they do that. In his career, 56 games played. Again, he is on the older side, 24 with those 6 seasons in college football. 176 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 22 passes defended, and 4 interceptions. So back-to-back guys that the Jets pick up there in the secondary. Now, the Jets went the entire draft without taking an interior defensive lineman, which I would have liked to seen them take an interior defensive lineman. I think a lot of other Jet fans were on board with that as well. This was a very deep defensive tackle, interior defensive line class. They did not, but they do pick up some defensive tackle help here in the form of Fatorma Molba, defensive tackle out of West Virginia, 6'4", 306 pounds senior, 4 seasons in college football, spent 2 with Penn State and then 2 with West Virginia. He is your prototypical run-stuffing, one-tech defensive lineman, which is what the Jets need. I think there is definitely a path here for Fatorma Molba. He's not a crazy, flashy type of player, doesn't have any elite traits. That's expected because he is a UDFA. None of these guys really have any elite traits, but he is your prototypical trench warfare, big run stuffing, clog up holes, one tech defensive lineman that with the right coaching and the right situation maybe can come through and play a role for this team if he puts together a good training camp. Last year had 50 tackles, which was a career high, and also added on 1 sack. So they get a big defensive tackle. A lot of Jet fans refer to it as they got fatter with this addition, and I think we all wanted to see them go with somebody in the draft. They didn't, so they pick up some help here in undrafted free agency. Quarterback gets picked up here. Another Missouri product, teammate of Armand Membu, the New York Jets, of course, first-round pick, and that is Brady Cook, quarterback out of Missouri, 6'2", 214-pound senior, 5 seasons in college football, all spent at Missouri. In his career, completed 65.9% of his passes for 9,251 yards, 7.9 yards per completion, 50 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. Pretty athletic player, can move a little bit. I think potentially here at best, I think you're looking at a guy that maybe battles Jordan Travis as your third quarterback. Otherwise, you're just looking at a camp body here. I don't think much else. Clearly, they weren't really all in on taking like a middle day 3 developmental guy. So you pick up Brady Cook here, UDFA, comes in the camp, depending on where Jordan Travis is health-wise, maybe has a shot at the QB3 role. Other than that, you're probably looking at practice squad or just a training camp arm, which is most likely outcome for Brady Cook. This next player here is kind of interesting. Just an interesting background. A lot of these UDFAs, and that's what I love making these videos, is you look at some of these UDFAs and their backgrounds. They're really interesting how some of these guys got to where they are now. And Jamarcus Weston is one of those guys. He's listed as an edge rusher out of Florida, but is not really that. I'll give you the backstory here. So he's 6'3", 235 pounds, redshirt senior. He spent all 6 seasons in college football. So has been he spent all 6 seasons at Florida. So has been in college football for a while. But this is a guy that's played almost everywhere. He originally started as a wide receiver. He then moved to safety and then moved to linebacker. Both of those he played in a backup role. And then he moved to edge rusher. So he has played 4 positions: wide receiver, safety, linebacker, edge. And he started on the offensive side of the football. It's not every day you get a guy that starts his career as a wide receiver in college and then by the end of it is an edge rusher. Not that common. But that is what Jamarcus Weston did at Florida. Now, why he's interesting and why he might actually have a shot at making the team is he's a special teams ace and potentially could possibly be a gunner for this team because he did a little bit of that at Florida. He was a special teams piece at Florida. Not necessarily really an edge rusher. He played mainly special teams. So this is a guy that is a special teamer in college. Jets pick him up. They gave him $200,000 guaranteed, which is a decent amount of money. So they clearly see something in him. He'll be an interesting name to watch. Somebody with a crazy background, playing wide receiver, ending up at edge rusher, playing special teams during all that as well. Could do a little bit of everything. In his career, 52 games played, 16 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss. Don't expect the numbers to be really that crazy because he primarily plays on special teams. But they pick up potentially what is a special teams ace here in Jamarcus Weston. At least that's what he was in Florida. Going back to the well here on wide receiver, the New York Jets pick up Jamal Pritchett, wide receiver out of South Alabama, 5'8", 175 pounds, so on the smaller side. He is a senior. You're looking at a slot and a special teams piece, maybe a punt returner. Did a little bit of that South Alabama, so possibly projects that way, although I think Kene Nwangu is probably fits that role here for the Jets from a special teams perspective. He's got speed, 4.42 40-yard dash. In his 2024 season, he had 91 receptions for 1,127 yards, 12.4 yards per reception, and 9 touchdowns. Those 9 touchdowns tied a South Alabama school record. He also led the Sun Belt Conference with those 91 receptions and with those 1,127 yards. So it was one of the better receivers in the Sun Belt Conference last year. Just very small, right? As a slot receiver, 5'8", 175. He's even on the smaller size for like a slot receiver in the NFL. But he's got some speed, punt returning background as well, similar to Quentin Skinner. See how the bottom of this wide receiver room plays out. Another name to throw in the mix. Pick up a linebacker here as well. Aaron Smith, linebacker out of South Carolina State, 6 foot, 226 pounds, senior. Very productive 2024 season where he had 95 tackles, which led the MEAC conference, half a sack, and had a pretty hefty amount of tackles for loss with 11 that he tallied last year. He's a 2-time All-MEAC selection and comes in as some linebacker depth. Another guy, too, to play special teams. Was kind of underwhelming at his pro day. Ran just a 4.69 40. But linebacker depth here for the Jets. Aaron Smith out of South Carolina State, who's coming off of a pretty productive senior season. Jared Bartlett, linebacker edge out of Cincinnati, 6'2", 237 pounds, senior. 6 seasons in college football, so another guy that's pretty seasoned, pretty experienced. 5 with West Virginia and 1 with Cincinnati. Just an interesting note that I threw in here because I just kind of a nerd and could do this sometimes. He was teammates with Fatorma Mulba for a year at West Virginia. So 2 teammates here back on the Jets, back together rather on the Jets this time. 2024 numbers, 69 tackles, 7.5 sacks, 3 passes defended, 12 tackles for loss. In his career, he appeared in 61 games, tallying 204 tackles, 5 passes defended, and 34 tackles for loss. Statistically does some good things. And last year, very productive year with those 7.5 sacks. So kind of see how he fits in. Linebacker, can play edge, a little versatile when it comes to that. So another piece to throw into the defensive depth there of this New York Jets roster as they continue to add pieces here. Offensive lineman, Gus Hartwig, center out of Purdue, 6'5", 312 pounds, senior. Very experienced player, 48 career starts over 5 seasons at Purdue, and provides a bit of versatility, provides some interior offensive line versatility. We thought that the New York Jets, I talked about this a little bit, that I would be on board with them drafting, whether it was a Mile Frazier or a Jonah Monheim out of USC, somebody like that to come in as a depth interior offensive lineman who can play a few different positions. They didn't do that, but Gus Hartwood can kind of do that here at Purdue. In his 5 years at Purdue, he's primarily plays center, but he saw playing time at guard and tackle. So has seen playing time a little bit of everywhere. Last year, some of his Pro Football Focus grades, 70.8 overall, a 66 run blocking grade, and an 82.1 pass blocking grade. Offensive line depth, see how he performs in training camp. This next player is interesting. Also an interesting story, interesting background, and could have a possibility of making the roster, staying on this roster, due to how he got here. So Leander Weingand, offensive tackle out of Germany, and he played 1 season at UCF. So he's 6'5", 318 pounds. In 2021, he played a season at UCF. He then returned back to Europe to play in the European Football League, the EFL, or the ELF, rather, the European League of Football. So he returned there, and he's been playing there ever since. Now, he's got a crazy bench press. He had 38 reps on the bench, which is 5 better than every other prospect at the NFL Combine. So that certainly pops off the charts. But he is an IPP. He is an International Player Pathway Program. That is how he got here. And the NFL has a protocol or whatever, a rule in place where if you're a International Player Pathway Program, if you're a part of that, you can be on a team's 90-man offseason roster and their 16-man practice squad without counting against the limit. So the Jets essentially can have Weingand on this team without him essentially counting on the 90-man roster, offseason roster, or the 16-man practice squad. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, but an interesting backstory, spending a year at UCF, originating from Germany. The 38 reps on the bench is certainly impressive. So a cool story that I think is something to watch for, right? You always want to, anytime you can get some of these UDFAs that have kind of that cool background story, pretty easy guys to root for. So that is Leander Weingand, offensive tackle. Local player they pick up here. So we go all the way from Germany to back here, pretty local. Daimir Miller, wide receiver out of Rutgers, 5'11", 181 pounds, senior, was born in Pennsylvania, but played college football in New Jersey at both schools. He played 5 seasons, 4 at Monmouth, and then last year at Rutgers. Very impressive 4.37 40-yard dash at his pro day. He's got speed, but this is going to get some Jet fans, Arian Smith vibes. Very fast, but can struggle with drops. 2023 was his best year in collegiate football with Monmouth. 90 receptions, 1,295 yards, 14.4 yards per reception, and 9 touchdowns. His receptions and yards in 2023 were both Monmouth school records. And in last year in the Big Ten, played pretty well. 59 receptions, 757 yards, 12.8 yards per reception, and 4 touchdowns. So got some looks against some top competition in the Big Ten after spending the first 4 years of his career at Monmouth. He's got speed, struggles with drops. Another name who will try and break on as a wide receiver. I know it's a different regime, but look, the New York Jets have had some UDFAs crack this roster recently as wide receivers, right? Xavier Gipson and Jason Brownlee, both were able to make the team 2 years ago. Gipson stuck around. Brownlee, of course, didn't. But the way this room is shaped out, you're going to have a lot of battles in the back side of this room where it's just a lot of unknowns. So Daimir Miller is another name to throw in the mix out of Rutgers. All right, 2 more players here. This guy Caden Davis, kicker out of Ole Miss, probably the most realistic out of every single one of these players that I've talked about to make this roster, because there is a legitimate chance if Caden Davis has a good training camp, he can be this team's kicker because they need a kicker. 6'1", 208-pound senior, 5 seasons in college football, 3 with Texas A&M, and 2 with Ole Miss. So both times in the SEC. Very good year last year. Was a first-time All-SEC member. He was also a semifinalist for the Lou Groza Award, which is given to the best kicker in the country. 24 of 29 on field goals last year. That's 82.8%. He was 57 for 59 on extra points, which was 96.6%. And he's got a little bit of a leg on him. His longest kick last year, longest field goal, 57 yards. So somebody that the Jets bring in here to a kicker room that needs help. Greg Zuerlein still on the roster. I'd assume, though, he probably gets cut. He shouldn't be kicking for this team anymore. You move on from Zuerlein there, and then you're looking at Anders Carlson, who saw some playing time last year for the Jets during their kicker fiasco as the only other one. So Caden Davis comes in with Anders Carlson and Zuerlein for now with an opportunity to compete and make a roster spot, and in a perfect world, find a long-term home here. Because the New York Jets need to find a kicker that can be here for a while. Like, it has been crazy how many kickers the New York Jets have gone through. Really, ever since you get rid of Nick Folk. I mean, they had the 1 year of Jason Myers. You had the 2 years of Greg Zuerlein. It has been a while since we've had a kicker for like 3, 4, just more than 2 years. Because Zuerlein was good for 2 years, fell apart last year. Jason Myers was only here for 1 year, then went to Seattle. It's been a while. So can Caden Davis be that? Come in, UDFA, surprise us, be that guy. Kicker is an underrated need for the Jets. Not many people want to talk about the kicker, but it's something that needs to be fixed. So they go the undrafted free agent route. In a perfect world, Caden Davis is this team's kicker long-term. Somebody. Caden Davis, somebody. Put it through the uprights, please. Anybody. Please. Nothing more excruciating than watching your kicker not be able to kick field goals. All right, final guy here, Peyton Page, defensive tackle out of Clemson, 6'3", 290-pound senior, 4 seasons in college football, all with Clemson. Very athletic and does some things really well. The biggest question with Peyton Page, and probably why he is a UDFA, he's got some upside, but he was 3 of his first 4 seasons, he was a backup. Last year was his only year that he started in college football. So not much experience, but it's got some athleticism, got some upside. I think the Jets are looking at that and saying, you know what? Bring him as a UDFA. It can't hurt, right? Last year, 32 tackles, a half a sack, 3 tackles for loss, had a pick 6 for 57 yards. So big man interception last year for Clemson. He's a 3-tech, 73 athleticism score, was top 20 among defensive tackles prospects in this draft. So has some upside, but very inexperienced, right? Only started 1 year. Other than that, was just a rotational depth piece at Clemson in his first 3 seasons. So defensive tackle depth there. So those are your 15 undrafted free agents for the New York Jets. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Who do you think has the best chance to make the roster? Do you like any of these names? Do any of these names intrigue you? Let me know what your thoughts are on the New York Jets undrafted free agent class so far. We'll be back the rest of the week with a lot more content coming your way. As always, until next time, JETS, 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 Jets.